Let's talk about ambition. It's one of those special traits that makes human beings so incredible. When humanity puts its mind to something, it feels like there's nothing we can't do. It can bring us unbelievable tech innovations, take us to the stars, or help us bring our biggest creative visions to life. And the thing about our ambitions is that we don't always have the tools to match them. Even the most monumental undertaking can still feel a little underwhelming next to the picture in our heads. But that doesn't make us failures. Our impossible desire to keep reaching for the furthest stars, despite the fact that our universe is always expanding, that's what makes us human. So let's talk about Starfield. Hi, I'm Giovanni Colantonio, and I'm here with my review of Starfield. Now, it's no exaggeration to say that Starfield is the most ambitious video game ever made. The intergalactic epic is the latest from Bethesda Game Studio, the team behind a little game called Skyrim. You know, that landmark RPG that's been re-released for over a decade? I'm pretty sure you can play it on a smart fridge at this point. It's clear that Bethesda wants Starfield to rise to the same heights and become a generational classic. Bethesda's often referred to this game as the outer space game, and that claim has led to some impossibly big expectations from fans. And it's hard to blame them. I mean, we have our own ambitions as players. Our dreams about the kinds of games that we want to play can be just as grand as their creators. But the higher the expectations, the harder the fall back down to earth can feel. So let's just get this out of the way up top. No, Starfield isn't the groundbreaking, universe-shattering game you might be expecting. It's a perfectly solid but fairly standard Bethesda RPG that happens to be set in space. Yeah, it's big, but your imagination is probably a little bit bigger. Okay, now that we're out of the hype-driven fantasy, let's talk about what this game actually is. Now, the good news is that if you love Bethesda's RPG style, Starfield really delivers. You're going to spend a lot of time talking to NPCs, but Bethesda knows how to make that loop really compelling. When I built my character, I imagined her as a sort of Han Solo type. She was a space scoundrel who grew up on the mean streets of Neon, which is this very cyberpunk city. And that wasn't just background information. When I actually got to Neon, I found that I could flex my history and conversations to gain a little street credit with the locals and more easily persuade people.
And I prefer a third party handle it. Would you be interested?
It's those RPG touches that make my story feel personal. And while we're talking about story, don't get too excited about the main plot in Starfield. While it's filled with some sci-fi intrigue, a lot of it just boils down to hunting for artifacts, which are just kind of metal MacGuffins. It's not that much more exciting than hunting for 5-colored jewels in a Mario game, even though it's dressed up in a more serious tone. Now, what you should get excited about, though, is the wider world building here. All of my favorite plot beats in Starfield happen in side quests, like this whole storyline where I have to commit acts of corporate espionage for a mega company. The stories like that are where Starfield actually gets intriguing for me, as it feels like it's almost a social commentary on human beings. Of course, we finally travel to the stars and turn the entire galaxy into a corporate battlefield. It's a biting bit of satire, and it's one that plays around with the different levels of ambition that the factions of its universe have. And there's that word again, ambition. And it's there that we start to get into both Starfield's most impressive feats and its biggest letdowns too. Now, on paper, the idea of getting to freely explore 1,000 planets is incredible. And in practice, it is to an extent as well. Bethesda has built a technical marvel here by creating many diverse, beautifully rendered environments that you can just hop into. It's massive in scope, and it's hard not to be impressed by that. But just because you have that much space doesn't mean that it's all worth exploring. And most of it isn't. Planets are basically a collection of landing zones sparsely populated with resources to collect or points of interest to scan, and the occasional cave. And as you can probably guess, those things aren't unique to planets. In my playthrough, I came across the exact same cave, loot placement and all, several times. Assets are copied and pasted onto planets with little rhyme or reason to give this illusion that they're lively and filled with stuff to do. But in reality, there's not much depth to it. You can scan aliens and plants, but you don't ever really get a good way to catalog and show off that data. It's also worth mentioning that this level of scope does come with a lot of performance and stability issues. Visuals swap between stunning and pretty dated. It can't hold a stable frame rate in its busier moments, at least on console, and I experienced some of the gnarliest bugs I've ever seen in a modern game here. Really, you're in for some true body horror. Now, what's equally disappointing here is flying. Yes, you can build your own spaceship and pilot around the stars, but it's not as exciting as it sounds. You know the orbit screen in Destiny 2 where you watch your ship hover in front of a planet while you load into an activity? Yeah, it's basically an interactive version of that. You just kind of hover in front of a planet in blank space until you press a button to land. Now, there are occasional battles with ships up in space, but they're fairly repetitive and just involve you hammering down your triggers with little strategy. It's kind of just a stopgap between fast travels, and that's honestly kind of a bummer. There's just not much depth to any of Starfield's biggest ideas. Despite setting out to make a definitive outer space game, it's surprising how few options you have when it comes to choosing the kind of astronaut you want to be. No matter how you want to play, you're going to end up killing a whole lot of people. I mean, this is a shooter at its heart, and it's a perfectly enjoyable one at that. Sure, weapons lack impact, but additional skills and some neat interstellar powers help give Starfield a solid enough action core, but there's just not much to do outside of that. I love building outposts and tinkering with my ship, but every system acts in service of that combat loop. And none of this is to say that Starfield is bad, or even subpar. It's a strong Bethesda RPG with lots of quests to complete, some great moments of storytelling, and impactful choices. But there's an inherent fallacy when it comes to huge, ambitious projects like this. Bethesda started developing Starfield 8 years ago, and that is a lifetime in the world of video games. What would have felt revolutionary 4 years ago feels dated today. I mean, despite its size, Starfield doesn't feel that much more groundbreaking than 2019's The Outer Worlds. Like the universe, the video game industry itself is always expanding. Bethesda reached for the edges of what was possible with this game, but that bar is already so much further away now than it was last console generation. And despite all that, I still walk away from Starfield pretty impressed. While it might not be the outer space game I always dreamed of, it is still a staggering technical achievement that shows just how far one studio could go to achieve its own dreams. And let's be honest, the end credits aren't the end for Starfield. Bethesda games live and die on their incredibly ambitious modding communities that keep their worlds alive for decades. If nothing else, Starfield is a sandbox full of possibilities for its most dedicated fans. I know we're going to see some amazing things come out of this game, and that's the most powerful thing about Starfield.